Well, hello and welcome. I'm your host, Sam Knowles. And joining us today is Sam Michelson, the founder and CEO of 5blocks, a technology and consulting company that specialises in digital reputation management. He and his 50 plus strong team truly do make smarter use of data to try and understand what the world really says and thinks about companies, brands and corporate executives, and if those opinions really matter or if they're just froth, bluster and noise. The company is based in both Jerusalem and New York City. A psychology graduate from Yeshiva University, New York, Sam is also a Master of Science in Management from Boston University. Sam founded 5blocks in 2009 and says that the company uses proprietary technology and big data analysis to empower top brands and prominent individuals to tell their best story via search to the audiences that matter most. So first of all, welcome Sam, welcome to Data Malarkey.
Great to be here, thank you.
Very good to see you. Now, I trust that's a decent summary of who you are and what you and your team do, but is there anything that you'd like to add or anything that I've got wrong?
That everything was correct. I think that the other thing I would add is I have 8 children, and they would be offended if they weren't mentioned, I think. So no, everything else is absolutely correct.
Very good. Well, listen, 8 children. Before we get kind of down and dirty and talk about data and the way that you and 5blocks uses data, I'd like to go a little bit beyond the CV and start with a question that's designed to get to the heart of you. And it doesn't necessarily ask you about your day job. So tell me, Sam, how do you spend your time?
That's a great question. Well, I'll go back to the 8 children. That's kind of a handful. I try to spend my time, I try to spend some sort of time paying attention to my kids every day. Not all of them actually live at home anymore. So that's important. I try to find time for that. I guess what I try to do is I have certain things that are really important for me in my life, and I try to find time for all of them. So I'm religious, and I go to prayer service every morning, and that's my meditation time. So every morning at somewhere between 7 and 8, I will spend half an hour in prayer meditation, and that's I feel like that centers me. It's a really important part of my life. Maybe not so popular these days with everyone, but it's important for me. And then 2 or 3 days a week, I will go mountain biking. Because that is my that's a way for me to get exercise, clear my head, think about things, and also I happen to live in a really beautiful area outside of Jerusalem, and so it's a way of experiencing nature and seasons and so on. So that's and then the rest of the day is going to work, and at work I would spend my time kind of oscillating between zooming in and zooming out. I zoom in on people, and I spend time with the different team members, and they could be management members or also people at every level of the company. So I spend a lot of my day, I think, meeting informally and formally with different teams, and then the zoom out is more thinking about like the sales goals of the company and how we're doing with that, partnerships that we put together, and then thinking about direction and things like that. So I'd say my day ends up. I'm not always terribly focused. Certainly during the part of the day when people are around, I love people. I love spending time with people, and which is why when work went to remote, that was kind of difficult for me. I really like people in the office, and we were very, very fortunate that as COVID wound down, we were able to get people back into the office most of the time. So we have about 4 days a week in. And that's been great for me to be able to interact with people. And I think that all the great ideas don't come from me; they come from interactions with other people. And so I would say I spent the most important part of the time is interacting with people, either to do work tasks or informally. And then generally around 5-6 o'clock when everybody's going home, that's when I actually sit down with a computer and work through proposals I need to do and sign agreements and things like that.
What a great and an interesting and varied time that you have, and we're not specifically. We will talk a bit about insight and how it's possible to move from data to insight. But in the models and frameworks of insightful thinking that I'm so keen on, I think, you're exhibiting two massively important traits there. One of them is taking time out. And I know you said that, maybe religion or spirituality is not so popular. I think candidly, the world is crying out for that ability to pause time and to take time out and away. And I think both in terms of your morning kind of prayer service, but also your mountain biking, just getting away from digital artifacts, digital devices, not so much other people, but getting away from those and allowing your brilliant, recombinatorial engine of your brain to join things together is great. But then also you're zooming in, zooming out, that sort of convergent, divergent thinking approach, I think kind of is bound to set you up for success. So let's think about data. Can you explain what role data plays for you in your day-to-day work? I mean, you are a data-driven business. Data is your lifeblood. But what role does data play for you in your day-to-day work?
Yeah. So most of our clients are come to us because they want to help understand and manage the way they and their brand are seen online. And so I think the traditional way of thinking about that has been, for most people, here's my Google results. This is how I look online. And I don't like this result and I don't like that result. How can you help me move them out of the way? That's traditional result. I think that's actually, if you were to look up digital reputation management or ORM, online reputation management, I think that most of the offerings, most of the discussions there will be about how to move things out of the way that you don't like. And frankly, when we first approached that issue, that was our approach as well. It's like, okay, we don't like this. This is the thing I don't like. How do I shovel it out of the way? The thing that really made us, I think, very different and made us a lot smarter was when we realized that actually the Google search results and everything you see online is actually data, and you can analyze it. So, when you start with, if you were, let's say, Nabisco, and you came to us and you say, well, we're concerned when people search a particular brand that there's some negative reviews about this brand or something that we don't like. I think that myopically, you would look at that and say, well, there's not a lot of data there. There's 10 results on the Google page, there's maybe 20, and what am I supposed to do with that? And what we were fortunate enough to do was to think, well, whenever you have that situation, there's lots of different ways that you can have data. So you could compare that brand to lots of other brands, maybe peers or competitor brands. You can compare that brand over a long period of time and see what were the results last week or next week. Do they vary by location? And what we found is that as you take your relatively myopic view, and then you widen it and say, what are the comparison points? How do I learn about? I can learn about the thing I'm looking at by looking at other things that are similar to it. So, for example, in the case of, say, that brand Nabisco, if you were to look at the search results in the UK versus the US versus other countries, you would find radical differences. So, first of all, it would give you context. My issue, it turns out that my issue is actually a very local issue. It's only an issue in the UK, or the issue only applies to certain of our brands, but not the rest of my brands. And then you can use that as the beginnings to understand what might be the underlying causes and what might be the solutions. And the other thing that we found, so the daily. So first of all, my company's created a system called Impact, and what Impact does basically is it looks at all of the relevant data for 100,000 brands and executives every day, all the search data. So Google search results in various locations. It grabs all that data and then puts it into a big data database or data store. And it's we use Amazon Web Services, and so we've got this enormous amount of data. And we can do all kinds of analysis on it and notice trends as they're happening, and we can do all kinds of interesting kind of analyses. So I would say that before we can't actually do anything that we do without having this enormous amount of data that grounds us and gives us context. So whenever we're in a situation, we're always able to look at the client situation with a large amount of general context, and then digging down and getting to very, very specific context of what that means. What that lets us do is do really, really interesting analysis of things like your current situation. Is this a normal situation? When I compare it to peers, is something standing out? Is this situation, is it very volatile? We have measures of volatility. Do these results change constantly? They change, is it related to the news? We can kind of tease out what are the data components. All of this, of course, is based on the idea that when you're dealing with a huge system, a very complex system like Google, obviously it is governed by rules of data as well, meaning it is doing an enormous amount of data processing. And if I can observe the way that it is working, then I can learn from that analysis. I can learn, and the goal is not to learn from that analysis how I can fool Google or trick Google. The goal is to understand what is happening and what might be the cause of issues. And not dissimilar from the way that a medical professional would do a blood test or different types of tests and look at a bunch of different factors and say, oh, this one seems a bit off. This one seems a little different. When I compare this to the population, I notice these things tend to go together. So we can develop these kind of patterns and understanding, and all of that leads to actually, I think the most interesting thing is taking emotion out of the equation when it comes to digital reputation management. And this is a very emotional issue when you're talking about an executive, someone is saying something unpleasant about them. But it's also true for a company. If someone is negative about a brand, I have been sometimes surprised by how personally the people who work on that brand, even if it's a very large multinational company with tens of thousands of employees, when something bad is said, they're implying that the kind of people that work here wouldn't have good values. That's hurtful to all of the people who work there, and it's sometimes surprising because it's like, wow, it's a brand. It's not you, but people who identify with brands when they work internally, and obviously there's financial reasons why this could be important. There's legal reasons, but when we can take the emotion out of it a little bit and move over to the data, what is the data actually telling us? Why is this story from 3 months ago still so prominent? What is it? Is it answering a question that people are asking? Is it satisfying searchers? Why does Google think it is if it's not? Those are all ways in which we use data to provide, like, I think, a different type of service to people.
And so Google in many places around the world, that's the primary source of data. Are you ingesting? Are there other types of data? Are there other categories of data that you're bringing in to understand executive or brand or corporate reputation?
So that's one of the main ones. We also track Bing search. Our main focus really is around search. So we do focus on Google search and Bing search, and increasingly we are now working on AI search. So we're tracking ChatGPT, and we're beginning to track Bing's AI search, and we just got access recently to Google's Bard chat. And all of these we consider to be really, really interesting sources of data, and I think that all of them I think are going to give us actionable insights. Even at our really, really initial look at some of at Bing's AI chat, we were able to see patterns in what types of sources Bing is using for different types of queries. So when you look at an employer brand query, Bing chat is very likely to use Indeed.com, and it's very likely to use the company's own website more than we would have thought. And the other thing I think that's really interesting is that we've seen with Bing's AI is that if there is a website that has the exact answer to the question that someone's asked, we have seen, even if it's not authoritative, even if it's the company themselves says we are the best at educational, tutoring, whatever. If you ask that exact question and the exact answer appears on someone's website with that question, we have seen that Bing actually will just take the answer directly from there and then attribute it from there as well. So I think that this is really, really early days, but there's a lot to be gained by studying the patterns that are happening in the AI search as well. The other type of content or data that we're collecting regularly is Wikipedia content. So we track we're kind of tuned into Wikipedia's XML. They do an XML update every time there's a change on any Wikipedia page, and we actually read that in real time. And we've created an alerting program for that, and we also track and analyze that, because Wikipedia it's a bit of a microcosm of what there is to know about a brand or an executive or a different entity. So we find that to be really interesting. A lot of people, there's a lot of focus by executives, particularly key top executives, on what does the Wikipedia say about them or about their brand. So it's something that we track really closely and we analyze as well.
I think it's fascinating to hear that already you're looking into ChatGPT and Bard and Bing and so on. It would be interesting to know. I mean, I don't want to go down this rabbit warren, but it'd be interesting to know if you can find out why, what the cause. Maybe it's in the algorithm, but what the cause of the hallucinations that ChatGPT often has. And particularly, I was talking to a friend he's finishing off a PhD currently, and he was doing some experimenting, and he discovered, and he asked for a well-referenced analysis of a particular topic, and it came back with plausible authors and plausible journals and plausible journal numbers, and they were complete hallucinations. But let's not go down that. But it's really, I mean, it's so interesting to hear that is a part of your offer. I mean, a natural thing to do, but with products that are only months old, that's really interesting to hear that you're ingesting that. Tell me. This is we've met several times, and I've never asked you this question, but I want to know why your business is called 5 Blocks.
That's a good question. So I have aside from having 8 children, I actually have 4 siblings, and all interestingly, they all live in Israel as well. We were all grew up in the United States and moved to Israel later on. There's 5 of us, and the year that I went off and started my own company, all 4 of my siblings actually all left their jobs independently and went and did something different, all related to online. It was very, very interesting. It was kind of unplanned. And we actually did share some resources. One of my sisters, one of my brothers had set up a company. And so we used his company so we all could get paid and pay the appropriate taxes. And then my sister actually created 5 Blocks. And that was her website to capture whatever different things she was doing. So I kind of thought of it as we were the 5 Blocks, the five kids. So we were all kind of in one way or another connected to it. But it doesn't have a huge amount of significance. I think for me it was really important that I think that when you build a business, it's a bit of a journey and you don't exactly know where you're going to go. And so when you pin yourself down, you say reputation management in Google for companies.com or something, then you've gotten so I still don't know where I want to be when I grow up. So I think it's always a bit of a journey. We felt that 5 Blocks is kind of an open name. It suggests that there's different pieces and different parts.
It's definitely enigmatic, but what I like about it is that it opens up possibility rather than closing it down. Tell me, so primarily Google, Bing, increasingly AI, and Wikipedia. What challenges do you face in making sure that data is useful to you? I mean, I guess you have fewer issues maybe than some who are collecting data to ensure it's clean and intact and usable. But what challenges do you face?
So I guess our biggest challenge is actually figuring out what to do with the data. We do a lot of good things. Meaning, we have plentiful data. We could, we're tracking, as I said, total of something like 100,000 brands and executives, the search results for them, and we're doing that every day, and we're doing that for many, many years. So we have this enormous amount of data and we started out, we never took any investment from any company. I started the company with a 60 website building, like other things you can imagine, and we've kept search. We've gone as far as Wikipedia because it tends to be the top thing you see in search in many cases. We've gone, we're looking at AI in the same way. This is another mode of search. And so that's why we're spending time there to develop very quickly on the technology side, which a lot of venture backs later we're still kind of figuring out how to slowly move our way into an analysis program and visualization and so on. So we had the luxury of being able to grow slower than other companies did. So you decide to process the data in this way, and you decide, maybe you take a provider, or you hire a person who's going to help you on data analysis, and they don't turn out to be as good as you thought, or it doesn't take you where you want. You can sunset their service and move on to the next thing, and without having caused a big uproar in your own company. So I think that slowing things down, this was not very intentional, but this is because we grew slowly because we were not venture backed. So, consulting, the fact that we became good consultants was really interesting, because I think that almost no one in the company actually had a consulting background. I think that might be good, because I think might have been thinking like, how do we maximize the hours? How do we push through this as quickly as possible? And then the technology, what happened was in the natural course of things, as we just looked around us, and we saw in almost every other field that was being upended over the last 10 years in so many other ways, and in so many other industries. And it just seemed natural to us to like, what if it was a kind of question we asked, what if you could line up the client and all their competitors and then look for the patterns? And we started by doing it manually. We would just line them up and say that was like, let's, this startup approach that says we care about every one of these clients because we really need them, they're feeding us. How do we give them everything they want from a consulting perspective? And then marrying that with been really great. We have not used data as I think some of the people on our team thought we might, which is like, great, the data will help we'll be able, the same account manager will be able to handle 10 accounts instead of 4 accounts, because look, the data focused on the on giving the quality to the client. So I guess we've always maintained that balance between satisfying the client and utilizing data in smart ways.
I often train and coach and develop people in insightful thinking, and I wanted to talk a little bit about insight now. One of the people I remember in an ad agency in London said to me that her definition of insight was the ability to see round corners. What's your approach to extracting genuine insight from the data that you're looking at, the search data that you're looking at?
We're looking at working on our employer brand, and we want people to think, to understand that all these great things we do with these programs that we have, and we seem to be lost. We actually have to do some of that thinking, analysis, and insights. Even I need to know what are the underlying causes. So what I found is that I don't know what the process is. I know that if I take the current situation, let's say the client gives me their name of the keywords that are important to them, and I kind of can size up the issue in terms of like what are people currently seeing. I guess putting it all in front of you and asking questions like, what would I expect to see? Why, asking the questions like, I've been doing this with ChatGPT. It's a really interesting exercise, is that you take a familiar story, and say, okay, given the following story, but not knowing the ending, ChatGPT, tell me what would be the most likely endings. I think that that's a fascinating way of thinking. And I think that way about a client situation. Say, okay, so let's say it makes sense that the client has for their employer brand that they have that their corporate website is at the top, and then that they have their employment website, their job careers at company.com. And then I ask, okay, well, what would I expect to see next? Well, I guess maybe the answer is, what is missing? What is the thing? The most interesting thing on the Google results page is the thing that isn't there. The most interesting thing I think in life are the things that aren't there, that are missing. Why is no one doing this? Why is this so when I look at a client situation, I guess what I'm thinking is, what is missing here? What is missing here? What would I have expected to see if I didn't know this? And there's this curse of knowledge that when you see your situation, it's very hard to unsee the situation. But when you go in as a consultant, the first time you see it, if you're smart, you can say, what would I have expected to see? Like, even I ask that question to myself, what do I think I'll see? I do this if you look at a Wikipedia page, you can see how many people viewed every Wikipedia page. It's information that's available on every single day. So when someone says to me, "Oh, I have a Wikipedia page," I always ask myself, I want to guess how many people go to this Wikipedia page a day. I think it's 100, and I click in, and I have no way of knowing. And I can, oftentimes I'm right, but sometimes I'm just so radically off, and that's so meaningful, because if it's 10 people a day, they're like, oh, okay, I have a complete, I have to figure out why would only 10 people a day go to this executive's Wikipedia page? Is it not showing up well? Are they, does no one care about them? And then if you see that it's 1,000, you're like, wait, something else is going on here completely. There's far more search than I thought. Maybe this site is coming up. So the same thing when I look at for insights, I'm thinking, what is missing here? What can I learn from what I don't see? And then start to work through, okay, so why am I seeing what I'm seeing? So it's kind of like question everything and keep thinking about what would the alternate endings and possibilities be. The most interesting insight we have for brands, and this applies to so many different brands, is why is it when I look at your Google results page, you're a brand, your consumer brand or your B2B brand, and whenever anyone thinks about your brand or when they go to the website, it invokes certain images. You're a luxury brand, so everybody's thinking about this luxurious experience that they're going to have with your brand, right? But when I look at Google, there's no images and no video. That's like an insight that's like an instant insight. And every single person that you tell that to, when you sit, they're like, oh, wow. They can't see the thing that's not there. So I think that's an example. And I would say for the fun is that almost every time we have a client, it's different insight. Like there's certain common ones that we say, well, this is a little unusual that I'm seeing this, or I'm a little surprised that I see that, but I can usually figure out why that's there. But then the real question is, what are the unique insights that I'm going to find here? And I think it's just it's a lot of curiosity and questioning and analysis. And maybe it's the kind of thing we can start. I did actually use this for ChatGPT. I used ChatGPT for this once. I was talking to a talent agency recently, and just before I got on the call, I took their Google search results page. I dumped the entire thing, just cut and pasted, just the text from it, pasted into ChatGPT, and I said, based only on this information, what do you know? And it gave me a synopsis of what it figured out about this company. It was like almost like the first paragraph of a Wikipedia page. And then I said, what other information would you like to know that you feel is missing? And in the case of this talent agency, it came back and it said, I want to know who their key clients are. And so I got on, like it was missing from the page. So I got on the call and I said, I was playing with ChatGPT. ChatGPT says that the piece of information most missing on the first page of results is who are your clients. And they paused and they said, that's what everyone wants to know. Everyone wants to know that. I said, so, why are you not showing it? I said, well, we have a problem. We can't list who our top talent is because A, if we lose one of them, we got to drop it. Second of all, the other talents are going to be like, well, why did you choose these ones and not the other ones? So we talked about a solution for them, which was why don't we help them surface a page that already exists that highlights some of these top talents? Meaning don't create a new page for this, but since this is something that seems to be missing, people seem to want it. What can we do to help surface that content either on their site or someone else's site? So that's the kind of insights we come up with. And I think increasingly I'm going to be using AI as an assistant, not as I don't think it'll be the solution, but I think that as an assistant to help me, again, to do the same thing. Like, what am I missing? What am I not seeing?
I think I am completely aligned with you. I think it's definitely a sorcerer's apprentice. It's not the sorcerer itself. I have when you say what's missing and what's not there, I have a sister who is in the UK, the forensic scientist of her generation, and she wrote a book about 4 years ago called "When the Dogs Don't Bark," because it's when the dogs do bark, you know exactly what's going on. It's when the dogs don't bark, and that seems to be completely aligned with your approach to getting to insight. She'll indeed be a guest on a future edition of the podcast. Of course, I've got a Columbo question for you, Sam. Obviously, is there anything about the way that you work with data that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Well, I have a question, but I don't know the answer to it. So maybe you can. And the big question is, why is no one else looking at this data this way? This is the thing that's weird. It's like, if you had this experience, you're exploring something new and you find yourself, you're exploring in a new world, a new location, a new venue, and everything looks so interesting. You're at a museum, or whatever, and then you find yourself alone somehow. Like, why is no one else exploring this area? I kind of feel like in this area of data analysis, we're a little bit alone, and that sometimes I just look behind me and say, well, where is everybody else? Am I missing something? So I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, I think clearly if you have 50 employees and you've grown to the scale that you've grown with the type of clients that you have, you're clearly in a fertile space. Before we wrap up, any questions for me?
Wow.
You don't have to.
I think I'll tell you what. I really enjoyed getting together with you a few weeks back, and I think I'll look forward to doing that again, and I'll come up with some good questions for that.
Very good. Okay, so finally, where can our listeners and our viewers, where can they find you online and in social media?
So just search my name, Sam Michelson, or search 5 blocks. And if we don't come up well in search, then we haven't done a very good job.
Thank you so much for your time, Sam. Thank you for sharing your approach to using data smarter. And I think it's fair to say that if there were more people in the world with your pragmatic and data-driven approach, there would be rather less malarkey in the world of online reputation management and rather more data common sense. Sam Michelson, thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
Thanks so much for listening to Data Malarkey, the podcast about using data smarter. To find out what kind of data storyteller you are, why not take our data storytelling scorecard? It takes just 2 minutes to complete and will give you a personalized report right away. Visit data-storytelling.scoreapp.com or follow the link in the show notes.